All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric. I've been here for about 6 months now, since May. Um, so the topic today is no why, no buy. Obviously, if your client doesn't have a why, they're just not going to buy anything because, you feel me? Um, if you don't got a why to buy into something, you're not gonna buy it. So essentially when I started this business about 6 months ago, I struggled like everyone. I really didn't know what I was doing. So my first week, I didn't make a sale. My second week, I finally got my first sale, and I just kept struggling and struggling. And for me, I feel like the reason that happened to me was because I was really never like paying attention or just being in these Zoom calls or just trying to get better every day for like the first 3 weeks. So obviously this is the reason that these calls are made, just so you can take notes and learn something from other people that are doing better than you. um so again, if you're struggling right now and it's like your second, third month or whatever, don't get frustrated, because that just happens to everyone, and that's just what comes with the business. But you just got to get around it. You got to ask questions, and you have to join these meetings every morning whenever they're available, because essentially that is the only way you're going to get better in this business, by taking notes and literally just implementing what other people are doing. um, and that is how you will get better. So we'll get into the script here on how I build my why. So I'm just gonna share my screen, and then just let me know if you guys can't see it. Just type one in the chat if you guys can't see my screen or my script.
We see it. You good?
All right, bet. So as soon as I get into the call and they answer, obviously I'm just gonna get the intro out the way, and I'm gonna tell them exactly what it's about. So I just tell them, this is Eric. I was reaching out from Benefits for Veterans office just in regards to that request for the final expense of life options for veterans. So as soon as they show me interest in it, I just breeze past everything. I'm just trying to get straight to the point. So if they tell me, oh yeah, I've been looking to cover my funeral expenses, I'm like, and I straight up, this is how you get the why out of them from the beginning of the call. So I ask them straight up, okay, and I mean, how long have you been thinking about getting something like this in place? Because if you get them to tell you their why at the beginning of the call, you're more than likely going to close them, because that is something they've been looking for a little bit, and then you're calling them, and then you're telling them, and then again, they just repeat the why back to you. So once you get the why from them at the beginning of the call, you're pretty much golden. So that's why I always like to ask them at the beginning of the call, how long have you been thinking about getting some veterans life insurance in place? Or how long have you been thinking about getting something like this in place? Like straight off rip, because I want them to tell me why they want it. Um, Now, after I get past the intro and I have them tell me why they want it, obviously this is gonna be the digging into the why. This is pretty important. And as a new agent, I want to focus. Thank you, Mike. As a new agent, you probably should focus on building the why here the most, because you really don't know the little tricks and whatnot you can add into the script later. So this part here as a new agent is very important. You want to ask him straight up, like, Fripp, God forbid, Elias, if God forbid anything happened to you, who's going to be paying for these funeral expenses and picking up all the pieces tomorrow? Obviously it's going to be their kids, their wife, their friend, whoever it is. And a lot of people don't do this right here. Once they tell you their name, you want them to spell out their name, because they're going to spell out their name and they're going to be thinking of that person the whole call. As soon as they're, saying their name, spelling out their name, and you want to bring up that name as much as you can as well. Um, Obviously you ask him, is Michael in a financial position to cover those funeral expenses? And they're gonna be like, no, probably not. So okay, so you're like most veterans. That's why you were looking into this, right? You just don't want anything to fall a burden. Correct, correct. I personally don't use this because some people might take that as offense, but as a new agent, I feel like you should be using this. Um, again, now again, this is important here as well. You want to make sure you ask them their needs and figure out what they're actually looking for. So you have to ask them. I mean, I know this isn't something we put much thought into, but are you looking to be buried or cremated? So whichever one they choose, you obviously tell them, a cremation nowadays goes from anywhere to $5,000 to $7,000, just depending on that celebration in the urn. And that is for the cremation. Now, if they tell you a burial, you can tell them, oh yeah, burials nowadays are getting pretty expensive. So now they're ranging from anywhere to 10 to even 15,000. Obviously, that is just depending on the fanciness of the service and opening and closing and transportation. And I always ask this right here. So the reason you were looking into this today is because you don't have a significant savings or any life insurance in place to help cover all those funeral expenses, correct? Um, Once they reaffirm that with me, they're telling me again that they don't have anything, and that is why they're looking into it. So if they have no coverage, or if they tell you have a little bit of coverage or whatever, you have the two things you can say right here. So if they tell you they have no coverage, you're gonna be like, got it. So obviously your main goal today is so we can get something in place to help cover all those funeral expenses and make sure that Michael doesn't have to go into any financial burden or any financial stress, or even have to open a GoFundMe trying to cover those final expenses, correct? Correct. And right here, if they tell you, yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of coverage, I have a little bit of savings or whatever. So once they tell me that, this is where I spend their coverage. So if they tell me they have a $10,000 policy and they want to be buried, I'm like, okay, so how long have you had that $10,000 policy active for? Oh, 2 years. Okay, good deal. So when you sent this in, obviously you've been seeing that the funeral expenses and the caskets and everything have been just going up in price, every year, correct? You just want to make sure you have a little bit of extra coverage to make sure everything is covered. And again, nothing falls a burden on Michael, correct? Perfect. So you just want to spend however much coverage they got. You want to like spend it on their bills, on their literally anything on their whatever you can spend their coverage on. Because at the end of the day, everything is a lot more expensive nowadays, and $10,000 in coverage really is not going to cover your typical funeral expense. So that's how I get into that, and I get past that. Um, Now, I feel like another place where you want to build the why a little bit is in the medical questions. So, you guys got to sound like you're professional when you guys are hitting the medical questions. Because if you sound like you're just breezing past them, you kind of sound like you're just going for the sell. So you guys want to make sure you're asking all the medical questions and all the little things. Try to learn all the medications and whatnot, just so you can sound a little bit more professional. And again, you're building that why you're trying to make sure that they are healthy enough to be able to qualify for something like this. um, Now, another place that I like to build the why on is the benefits. So the first one I want, I'll go with them is the immediate coverage, obviously. So I just tell them, this is immediate coverage. This just means whenever that first premium is made, you are covered day one. So you're not going to be on any 2-year wait period, not like most other non-AVA rated carriers. Now, the second one is locked in. So this just means that your price is never going to increase and your coverage is never going to decrease. And I like to throw a little more into the locked in. So I'll be like, essentially, if the price is going to be $250 today, that's never going to increase on you. And if the coverage is going to be, 25,000, that's never going to decrease. The reason I do that is because obviously you've already asked them how much money they're bringing in and how much they're getting left behind. So at this point, this is when I'm already on the quarter. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how much, money are they probably going to allocate to something like this? So I'm already throwing an idea of how much, it's going to cost and how much coverage they're going to get. So whenever I quote them, they're like, oh yeah, that kind of sounds like what he told me earlier. Obviously, tax-free, you just want to read that to the T. The living benefits, the double accidental. For the permanent coverage, I just like to read it off to you as well. Sometimes I throw a little extra in there if they're a little hesitant about, anything, but you just want to make sure that you're finding something in the script that you can throw little things into that's just going to make it sound a lot better, and it's going to give them a why to want to get the insurance. But for me, I feel like where I build most of my why is definitely going to be when it comes to coding. Because whenever as soon as I hit the coding, I ask him like, if, let's say, hey, James, based on what you told me today, it sounds like you are wanting to mainly cover those funeral expenses, but you did mention to me earlier, you had a mortgage and then you have, some debt you're trying to pay off. So I'm assuming when you sent this in, you wanted to make sure that your family is debt free and obviously they don't lose any of their assets, correct? Correct. Um, so when we're gonna do here today is we're gonna make sure we protect your mortgage and we're gonna make sure that your family is debt free, God forbid, when you pass away. Um, so the reason I do that is because when I'm gonna quote them, my bronze option, obviously this is you guys got to make sure that they can afford it and they actually have the money. You don't want to sell them a policy that they can't afford and they're just gonna cancel a month later. Um, but whenever it comes to the quoting, you just want to ask as many questions as you can. Like you want to get as much out of them as possible. Like, do you have a mortgage? Do you have bills? What are your monthly expenses looking like? So at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that your daughter, is in well good hands and doesn't have to come out of pocket for any leftover bills you leave or your mortgage or any debts that you might have or anything like that. Correct? Correct. So once you get them to acknowledge that they have all these things, that they have a mortgage, they have debt, whatever they have, their bills, it's going to be easier for you guys to quote them higher because at the end of the day, they know they need more coverage and they don't want to leave that a burden on their family. And again, when it comes to the quoting, I just go straight, the bronze option here, because we want to make sure we're covering their funeral expense and everything else as well. So again, so the bronze option here would cover your funeral expense, but also make sure that, there is some money left behind for those bills that you might have left over and might just cover about 2 or 3 months of that mortgage there. Does that make sense? And then obviously tell them the price and the coverage. And whenever you get to that silver option, you want to tell them that, this is again going to cover your funeral expense, but this is just going to make sure your daughter can pay off most of the leftover bills, keep up with the mortgage for about 6 months. You guys want to break it down. So like, let's say for the bronze option, you want to, if they're looking to cover their mortgage, you want to cover for like 3 months. If it comes to the silver option, you want to cover their mortgage for 6 months. And if it's the gold option, you obviously want to cover for the full 12 months. But other than that, I feel like that is where I build most of my why. It's on the quoting because this is where you want to, like I said earlier, this is where you want to ask more questions. You want to get everything out of them right here. So you know exactly what they need and what's going to be beneficial for them. Because at the end of the day, guys, you are the professional. So your job is to put them and their families in a good situation. So you're just giving them what they actually need. Obviously, you got to make sure it is affordable. Um, now, so all right, so that is pretty much it for where I build my why. I mean, there are some little other things on the script that you can use as well. I'm just trying to find it here. Um, but yeah, so just going back up because I feel like I didn't touch on this enough. Um, so you just want to make sure that you get all the information out of them here as well. Um, like I said earlier, make sure you get their name of their kids or whoever they're listing as their beneficiary. You want to make sure they spell it out for you. Um, and again, you got to figure out what they're actually looking for here, which is going to be a burial or a cremation. And once you get there, obviously, you come back down to the quoting, and then you can ask a little more questions about what their mortgage is looking like, um, and every other thing that they might or you feel like they might need to cover there. Um, But other than that, do you guys have any like questions that might you guys be getting on the why part of the script?
When you replace policies, Eric, how do you build the why off that? Because I know like they already have insurance in place.
All right, so when they tell me this, like obviously they're gonna tell you, oh, I already got that taken care of. Okay, so I straight up tell them, okay, so when you sent this in, you were just looking to add some extra coverage, correct? And if they tell me no, then I go breaking down the coverage. Okay, so how long did you get that $10,000 policy? Oh, 2 years ago. Okay, perfect. And you know the name of that carrier? Globe Life. Oh, wow. Okay, so I mean, do you have any crazy sicknesses or anything like that? No, not, and they're obviously gonna say no, not that I know of. And then I personally don't ask him how much they're paying or for it. I just ask him how much they're getting charged, because it makes it sound like you're on their side. Um, obviously, if they're overpaying for that coverage, you can just easily replace it. Tell them you can get more coverage for what they're paying, or you can just save them money. But again, if they're just being stubborn, you just want to keep pushing on all, oh, that $10,000 is not going to be enough to cover everything. So you want to add them a little more. Um, but again, just when it comes to the replacing, you just got to ask them questions on how long they've had it, how much they're getting charged for it. Because as soon as you can save them money, you can go straight into the back into the script, digging into the why again. You're gonna ask them, okay, so on your current policy, who's your beneficiary? Okay, and I'm assuming you got that just to make sure nothing would fall a burden on them, correct? Correct, perfect. Now, was that policy to cover that cremation or just a burial? If it's $10,000 and they say burial, and you're like, okay, so you know how much burials are going on for nowadays? We like $15,000 bare minimum because they already have 10,000. You're just trying to get them a little more. Um, but yeah, that's
Oh,
pretty much how I just break them down and just replace their coverage.
okay. So you basically just like get their why on like why they got the insurance policy in the beginning. The
Yeah,
first.
so if they tell, yeah, like I said, if they tell me they have $10,000, I ask them, okay, how long ago you had that, and how much are you getting charged? And then I ask them, okay, so when you got that, you were just looking to make sure that nothing would fall a burden on any of your loved ones, correct? And then obviously they're gonna say yes because that is the reason they got that.
Okay. Appreciate you, bro.
Sure. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead, bro.
When you're quoting, I'm assuming you like, okay, I guess starting at the income portion and how much they have left over. Um, what questions do you ask that aren't in the script? Like you said, you pretty much by the time you're quoting, you know they have a mortgage or if they don't. So do you ask that when it comes to income? Do you run through all their bills with them? Do you ask them if they're
Yeah,
a
so
homeowner?
whenever I
And
get
then I have
here,
a follow-up question whenever you answer that one.
all right, good. So whenever I get here, obviously I ask them, you retired, disabled, or maybe even still working. And then I should ask him, how much would you say you're bringing in per month here, just to a ballpark? If they tell me they're bringing in like $5,000, and be like, okay, so at the end of the month, do you have a mortgage, or what is that looking like for you? If they tell me mortgage, I'll be like, okay, and how much? Because I'm just, when they tell me their monthly income, I want to know exactly how much they're spending each month and how much they're actually leaving. Because if you ask them, like the question right here, okay, and at the end of the month, once all your bills are taken care of, they're just going to give you the lowest number that comes to mind to them because they obviously just want to be cheap. So I ask them, okay, so you're bringing in $5,000 a month. Is that including your social security and your disability? Yes, perfect. Now, do you currently have a mortgage? Are you paying rent? What is that looking like for you? Oh, I have a mortgage. Okay. So, and how much is your mortgage this month? $1,200. Okay. And obviously you have electric bills, water bills, correct? Yeah, 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 whatever. And how much is that, would you say, per month? Around $650 in total. Perfect. And do you have a card note or anything? Yeah. How much are you paying for that? Like, you just want to act like everyday things that people are
Yeah,
paying.
so you're actually running through their bills with them.
Yeah, yeah. I'm asking them what what their monthly bills are looking for, but I'm actually getting the exact numbers out of them, not just straight up asking them how much they're left with at the end of the month. Because most people are just gonna say the lowest number that comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna tell you their worst month, which is that's I mean, that's what you need to know because they need to keep their policy on their worst month. Um, but I guess so whenever my next follow-up question is, let's say, what the fuck? Why is USPS closed? My next follow-up question is like let's say, what would you say your percentage of remaining income, like that you would quote for like bronze, silver, and gold? Like is like bronze, like let's say they have $1,000 for simple numbers left over. What are you gonna have your bronze at? What are you gonna have your gold at? You know, like maximum.
Yeah, so if they have $1,000 left over, I'll probably start the bronze at like 130, then the silver at like 200, um, and the gold probably max like 350.
Okay, so you have a pretty big gap between them then, huh?
Yeah, I try to make him like one sound better than the other one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm assuming you probably sell the gold pretty hard by, explaining everything it's gonna do for them and their family.
Yeah, obviously, like if it's like a mortgage thing, I'm gonna tell them that the gold is gonna make sure that the mortgage is taken care of for a full year, just to make sure it gives, the family enough time to decide what they're gonna do with the house, or if it's like any other bill or anything like that, just to give them enough time to, gather up the money to pay off the rest of the debt or whatever. Um, but I feel
Yeah.
like
And,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so basically when you hear there's a mortgage, you're gearing towards rather than just like it being final expenses for them, you're gonna give them the idea of like, hey, you should protect your mortgage. You're gonna gear towards that kind of sale instead, correct?
Well, I'll do both. I'll make sure that their funeral expenses are covered, and I'll make
Yeah.
sure that there's something for the mortgage. Yeah. But I feel like most people don't even ask this question right here. And the way that I ask it is I'll be like, given those three options there for, the wife, which one out of the gold, the silver, and the bronze makes the most sense for you? So again, I'm just bringing up the idea of the gold again to them. So the first one that comes to mind to them is the gold. And most of the time is the one that they choose, obviously, if they can afford it.
Sorry, one more question. So are you like, are they indicating to you that they want to protect the mortgage or you're giving them the idea?
So whenever they tell me they have a mortgage, um, obviously, it just comes back to assumptiveness. If they
Yeah.
tell me they have a mortgage, it's like however much it is, I should have told them, okay, so you just want to make sure that your daughter doesn't lose the home and can, has time to be able to do something with it, correct?
Yeah,
And they
that's good.
correct, and I'm like, yeah, so we're gonna make sure, we give her enough time to, make sure that she can keep the house for a little bit so she can decide on what she's gonna do with it.
Oh yeah, good shit. Erick Alcantara, boy.
Sure. Any more questions?
I got one more. I got one. When you're telling them that, like in the beginning of the call, when they're trying to get you off the phone and they're like not interested, I already have everything taken care of, and they're just like trying to get you off the phone. What are you doing to keep them on the phone and build that why?
So I've always said that the not interested is my favorite objection, um, because those are the people that genuinely are bringing in the most money and they feel comfortable with what they're bringing in. They feel like each month they're probably bringing like $7,000 and they're probably putting some of that aside for their family. That's why I feel like that's my favorite objection. So as soon as they tell me I'm not, as soon as they're gonna tell me I'm not interested, I cut them off. I'm be like, okay, so what are you not interested in? I haven't even offered you anything yet. Do you even know what this is about? All right, and they're gonna say, no, I don't even know what this is about. They're gonna tell you they don't know what it's about. So I'm gonna be like, okay, so yes, this is just to make sure that everything is taken care of and nothing falls a burden on your family. Now, God forbid, if you were to pass away today, what is it gonna look like for your daughter to come out of pocket $20,000 to $30,000 to cover all your funeral expenses?
That's smooth.
What if right there, Eric, they tell you like, oh, I already know what it's about. It's about life insurance.
I mean, so perfect. Did you already get that taken care of? Um, Most of the times they're gonna be like, no, okay. And I ask them, okay, so why haven't you got this taken care of? What's been taking you too long? You're only getting older, man. It's only gonna get more expensive on you. So we're gonna do here today is make sure we get this taken care of you, take get this taken care of for you, and then make sure we lock you in at a good rate before everything gets a lot more expensive on you.
Appreciate it, man.
I just like to check them and call them on their bluffs whenever they start saying things like that.
Yo, Eric, Jarrell's got a question.
Yo,
When you're
Jer-
talking to a client, right? Usually, what I realize when you talk to most of them, if you push hard enough with certain parts, you can close them, but with some you can't. What is like that determinant factor for you? What's that in between for you? That line.
Wait, can you ask that again, Jero?
So with most clients, usually when you get to certain parts like the social, you could push, you could get that social, the accounting, you could push, get that accounting. But for some of them, if you push, they'll give you that objection, but there's always that push you could give. Usually there's the people that you can push and it works, and the people you push and it doesn't. What's that? What's the line right there for you? Where you can just
So
keep pushing.
me personally, bro, I just push them until they hang up on me. So if they give me a social objection, I just tell them, yep, that's just for your medical background check. Now go ahead with your social. They still don't want to give it to me. I completely understand that. Now, most importantly, sir, that is the only thing that's on your death certificate for them to pay out your loved ones. If that's not on there, who do you expect them to pay? They're still not budging. Obviously, I'm going to send them a picture, but then at this point, I just check them. I'm like, okay, I mean, is it going to be a trust thing? Do you even feel like you need this? I mean, you told me earlier you had no coverage, so what's the real problem here? And I feel like that's the one that gets them, and they start thinking a little bit. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do need this. They do need to go through my medical background check to make sure I am, healthy enough to get insured. So most people just start giving it up there. But for me, I genuinely just push them and just keep asking until they hang up on me.
Bad, perfect, Eric.
More questions?
Yo, I got a question.
Yo, Grayson.
So, how do you know when to be more of like assertive with the client, compared to just being like agreeing with them, and kind of going in and asking more questions and then attacking them?
Um, so the method is really just agreeing. So agreeing and asking and attacking, bro. So you want to agree with them, you want to ask them, and then you want to attack them. So for me personally, I'm just assertive through the whole way through the call, bro. I'm just guiding them exactly the way I want them to go. Because if you let them guide you, they're gonna close you instead of you closing them. So you just want to make sure you're assertive as you can be with them. Obviously, if you have to not be too assertive because they're that type of person, um, you want to do that. But for me personally, bro, I feel like you should be assertive like 90% of the times.
All right, bet. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Eric, I got a question.
Yo, Tanner.
When you had your 2 highest months, what was your day-to-day schedule looking like?
Um, So I would be coming in around the same time, like I always do 9 a.m. Then I would dial from like 9 a.m. to like 10 p.m. consistently, without no hesitation. So your schedule, like I'm just gonna say this honestly, your schedule is when it's gonna be what you want it to be and how bad you want it. Because if you just want to treat this like like a hobby or whatever, you just want to come in here and do a little bit of work, that's exactly how it's gonna pay you. But if you come in here every day and just like literally work from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., you're gonna see the results that all the top producers are getting, because there's only one thing that's gonna keep you ahead in this business is literally outworking the person next to you.
Facts.
Any other questions?
Yo, Eric, in the intro, you said right after they tell you they want to either leave something behind or final expenses, you just say, what was your line again?
So if they tell me, yeah, I just want to make sure this is covered or whatever, yes, what I've been looking for, I ask them, okay, and how long have you been looking to get this covered for, or how long have you been looking into insurance for? Um, if they tell me a while, I'll be like, okay, and what's taking you so long to get that taken care of? Um, so I just straight up ask them, why they want it, and if they've been looking for a while, why they haven't got it already. Um,
I gotcha. And then I assume you just go straight into like the beneficiary right after that.
Um, yeah, I will, but if they're like a little bit hesitant on their answer, I might ask them like, do you already have a little bit of coverage in place, or were you just looking at extra? Because most people, if they tell you like, if you ask them, were you just looking to make sure that the funeral expenses were covered? They're just gonna give you like that soft yes answer. Um, so that's when I ask them, okay, and how long have you been thinking about getting something like this in place? And do you already have a little bit of coverage, or do you have no coverage at all?
I gotcha. All right, bet. And then let's say if they've already got a policy, do you instantly try to go into like a replacement? Like do you instantly try to find out about their policy if they feel like they need another, like, if they were just trying to add on? Like do you dig into what they have if you know they're gonna like eventually just get another policy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so if they tell me they have coverage, I personally don't proceed with the call until I figure out how much coverage they have, uh, what the name of the carrier is, and how much they're paying. Um, because most of the times, if they're already paying a good rate and then you try to match them with the same coverage and it's more expensive, they're just not gonna want it. So I just want to make sure that I'm getting as much information from them as possible. Again, like I said, the coverage and how much they're getting, how much they're charging for them. Um, Most of the times you're able to save them money. If not, you just want to reiterate them that you're going to be giving them a little bit more coverage, and it might be a little more expensive than what they're paying because they are a little bit older now.
Yeah, Eric, I got a question that's a part of that. So what do you do with people who just don't want to give you any information about their coverage that they already have so you can try to like see if you can even replace it?
So like if they say why does that matter to you or something like that,
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you don't need to know that or etc.
I'm like perfect.
Or
So
like
that
I
this
just
is
don't have it.
Uh, so if they just don't want to give me the information, I just be like, perfect. So this is just to make sure that when you got this in place, they put you in a good situation and your veterans discounts were applied. Does that make sense? Now, how much are you getting charged for that?
Gotcha.
And what was
Gotcha.
the other
Thanks,
one,
dude.
Michael?
What's that?
You said if they just didn't want to. What was the second question to that?
Yeah, no, you answered like just if they don't want
Oh,
to cooperate with you, just
yeah.
to give you information so you can even see if you can replace it or not.
Yeah, you just want to check them, bro. Like just call their bluffs. If they like, let's say they tell you that, oh, I don't know where the paperwork is. So you tell them, okay, so it sounds like you don't even have any coverage in place at all because that piece of paperwork is the most important thing for them to pay out your loved one, sir. So what we're gonna do here today is make sure we can get you something in place to make sure that nothing falls a burden on your loved ones.
Gotcha. Thanks, bro.
Yes, sir. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, Eric, I got one. How
Yes,
do you
sir.
stay away from making appointments? Because we know how appointments go, whenever times come and you call them, they don't answer. So what's the difference you make that gets you that one call, one close rather than setting that appointment?
So if they tell me that, let's say I'm gonna close them, they'd be like, oh, can you call me later or whatever? I'll be like, so unfortunately, we have a a no callback policy. Since there's too much sensitive information that we go over, we have to close out the file, while we're on the phone. So if I do have to reach back out to you, it's gonna be pretty hard to start the case again, and we're gonna have to restart the whole process again. So this process is only gonna take, another 5 to 8 more minutes. Just bear with me here so we can get it done today and I'll be out of your hair.
Smooth. Bet.
Yes, sir. All right. Any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, let's get to dialing, guys. Have a great day. Let's make some money.
Thank
Let's
you,
get
Eric.
it. Boom. Thank
Go
you, Eric.
Alcantara.
Let's go.
Good stuff,
E
boy.
money, baby.
You want to go band for band today?
You don't want that, Spanky. You don't want
Hey, you
that,
want-
Spanky.